guys are ready. Masa.
Okay, we're ready to get started.
Yeah.
Great. I'm Pam Hollingsworth. I am with Progress Incorporated, and I am the Employment and Community Services Director. And so I was one of the TNCO committee members, along with Troy and Billy, who have come together to give this presentation today. So, Billy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. I'm Billy Fly. I'm an employment specialist supervisor. I work for Miller Rich and Middle Tennessee. We try to kind of cover West, Middle, and East Tennessee in our TNCO committee. So I'm kind of in the Middle Tennessee region, Nashville.
My name's Troy Allen. I'm the West Regional Director for SERVS. We're based in Memphis, Tennessee. We serve the Western region. We also have SERVS Middle, and we are working to get them involved in employment. So it's a wonderful topic for us to discuss today, and we're happy to be part of this wonderful organization, and we're ready to move forward.
Perfect. So, our TNCO committee, this again was made up of the agencies that were members of TNCO and also were providing employment services. Some of the early reasons why we started this committee was for increases in reimbursement rates from vocational rehabilitation, ECF, and we got those, and that was great. Some of the things that we kind of learned along the way is we collaborate really well together, and we have an ability to sit down and talk to other agencies about what they're doing, how they're solving challenges. We're also able to talk about the services, which services seem to be more effective, and what can we do to make services more effective. And also talking about training and things that we're doing within our own agencies that might be helpful to other agencies. And so we talk a lot about when we bring people on board and what that shadowing experience looks like, and working alongside all of the many training requirements that are that one needs to have to provide employment services. And so we wanted to list some of those services out, and we started with ECF, choices, and DDA employment. Even myself just recently realized that there was a change in the ECF forms, and now everything, instead of being Blue Care or United, it has the TNCare tagline on it. One of the reasons for that is because DDA has also switched to those. And so now one who is in that old 1915C waiver can receive exploration, discovery, job placement, supported employment, all of the many employment services that ECF also receives. So I just wanted to say that out loud today. And some of the other services that we have in employment is the benefits counseling, which we have found to be very popular among mostly parents who have a lot of fears about what happens to my Social Security when someone goes to work. Exploration, do I want to work or not? Discovery, what kind of job do I want to do? Situational observation, that's where we get to try out some different jobs and work alongside people who are actually doing those jobs. There is self-employment and job coaching on many different levels. There's career development. Do I want a second job? Do I want a promotion? Am I looking for more responsibility, higher pay? A career development can mean a number of things. And then we have the job development plan. And then once someone gets employed, we move on to job development startup. And we're going to have a chance to answer some questions here at the end. Vocational rehabilitation, we have the pre-employment, the consultations, the job readiness, employment. We have supported employment, just a regular placement and retention, post-employment, job coaching, check-ins, special programs, project search, school and adult models, and also some continuing education that again is setting up internships, preparing people for work. So those are your vocational rehabilitation services. And then we'll move to MAP services, Medicaid Alternative Pathways to Success. And so we have the MAPS is a little different, right? This is more like checking goals. And so there's employment goal that one can check. There's also pre-employment and career development that we spoke about earlier. Or one would have the choice to move to vocational rehabilitation. And we're still having some conversations around, you know, how that works together. I think in the beginning, folks sat down at the table and they initially just had job placement in their minds when we talked about this. But when we start tapping into other programs like a continuing education program, like a Next Steps at Vanderbilt, or like a project search program, or even if the person is attending TRC. And so we have to be real careful that what we're working on MAPS doesn't fall into the same bucket where money is being used from vocational rehabilitation. And we'll talk about that a little more if anyone is interested when we get to the question part of this. And then also what's different about MAPS is it's a lot of enabling technology. MAPS only lasts for 3 years. And so they want people to be able to have all the things that can help them still readily available to them once they leave the MAPS program. And so, you know, we've been getting your normal iPads, laptops, those kinds of things. And then we have a lot of other things kind of outside the box. We're starting to see a lot of people using digital calendars. This looks like a TV screen hanging on your wall, but it's a calendar. People are color coding those. Moms can load those. People can load those. So it's just a real good way for people to keep up with their appointments, they keep up with their work schedules, all the fun things that they have in their lives. And so we've moved on to doing some different things with the enabling technology because of the MAPS program. And each person in MAPS has a yearly budget. And again, it only lasts for 3 years of $2,500. So that's $7,500 in total that one could utilize enabling technology throughout the MAPS program. And then the next slide is about employers, and I'll turn that over to Troy.
Okay, thank you, Pam. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about employers because they are the ones that allow this work to be done. So we have eager job seekers who want to go to work, and many of them can do the work as is, but we understand that some will need accommodations and some might need some assistance in certain ways. So we have to start by developing and maintaining a great relationship with employers. And the most significant part of that, in my mind, is that the employer trusts us. Because if we are telling them that we're going to bring them a candidate to do the work, and we bring the person and they cannot do the work, then we have lost some of their faith in us. So we have to make sure that we not only establish those great relationships, but we maintain those great relationships. And I'd love to give an example, and we actually have a success story that we'll show near the end of this presentation. But I love to talk about that we had a gentleman who worked at AutoZone Fulfillment Center here in Memphis. Now, I'm not sure about across the country or even across the state how big AutoZone is, but in Memphis, AutoZone is huge, and they have a huge distribution center that they do all of their orders from. And because of one gentleman, Dennis, who worked there, he's since retired, he had a granddaughter with a disability. And because of Dennis, he was open to the idea of supported employment. He invited us to come in and give things a try. And because of that, we had the very first two people to leave our workshop was William and Eric. And that was in 2014. Those gentlemen are still there, still working in the fulfillment center, still doing a great job, making great money. And because of their works, we have over 20 people working in that fulfillment center because AutoZone gave us an opportunity. We delivered people who could do the work, and they are still happy with what we're providing. So that relationship has flourished because of that. So it's important that we get not only the employers on board, but also we need to talk with our staff. We need to have conversations with our families. We need to have everyone on the same page because it needs to be successful. So if you have a parent who's not happy with the pay or the location, or they're not sure if they want their person to go to work, then that's going to create some issues. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to develop and maintain those relationships, talking with your staff and families. One thing I say, and I hate to actually say it, but it's true, and it is if a staff member is opposed to a person going to work, they have a lot of influence. So we want to make sure that we keep our staff involved in the process, help them to understand why employment is so important, and help them understand their role in supporting that person to get to work and to do the great job that we know they can. So it's important that we keep everyone on board. We also track our employers for the future because, again, we may have people who are advocates in those workplaces, and they will talk to the right folks to get us in the door. So just tracking those employers and making sure we know who we're working with, we know who our friends are, and then most importantly, we recognize those businesses who hire people we support. And in doing so, we will, within our network, let the families know and let the other people who support our organization know that, hey, this business is working with us. And because of that, we have an ongoing great relationship, and we would love for you to patronize that business if at all possible, because they're supporting us and we want to support them. So again, it's all about those relationships, maintaining the relationships, and making sure that we are honest and upfront, that we deliver people who can do the work, and that we earn and keep the trust that we have with those employers. So that's what I wanted to share regarding about our wonderful employers. And we're going to go back to my colleague Pam. She's going to handle the next couple topics.
So when we did this presentation at the TNCO conference, we had people ask some really good questions. We had questions ready ourselves. And so that's kind of what this is, a listing of a combination of both of those. And then when we finish, of course, anybody will have an opportunity to ask anything that we didn't cover. So the first question, in recent years, DDA has promoted shift employment first training and accreditation. What benefits have you already seen your agency from this, and what potential long-term benefits do you project to have? And so just a few things that really prompted me through the accreditation process to make some changes here at Progress. One was creating a committee of people, an employment committee. So we talk all things employment, but we have these folks from all departments across Progress. And this has been real helpful as we've been able to share success stories. And really just making sure people understand like what services are available to them. Um, I know before I had a tendency to do a whole lot of work in ECF services, but not necessarily choices. And so, some of you may provide those services. We call them senior services. They're not always seniors, but they do have to qualify for the choices program. And they're, again, eligible for the same employment services as one would receive in ECF. So creating that committee and really opening it up, all employment stuff opened up to the whole agency, I think has been very helpful. And since doing this, I think I've picked up 3 folks from senior services or the choices program. And then another thing that we did is we started, to touch a little bit on what Troy was saying, we started in our monthly newsletters, on our, all of our social media, sharing an employer and employee story. And so we've been able to do this with many businesses where we're telling like the backstory about the business, but also celebrating the success of someone who went to work for that business. One of the ones we recently shared was with McCormick's veterinary clinic. We had never explored a job there. We had someone living in their community. Progress is actually in their community. And so we created a new relationship. And we have since had someone going through discovery, interested in working with animals. I think we've all heard that before. And so one of the places we went to tour for the discovery process was at this veterinary clinic. So when we make relationships with employers like that, and that's one of the things Troy was speaking about, like how we can set ourselves up for the future, right? And so that's just a couple of things that I know I got out of the process. I did talk to a lot of the DSPs who went through the training that was like, well, thank you. I didn't really know that's how it worked. I didn't know that people could get these things. And so really just providing some education and some success stories agency wide has also been very helpful to increase employment services and to give people the best possible services. The next question, what inspired your organization to begin offering employment services for people with disabilities? Well, I mean, I'm sure Progress is like a lot of agencies. There was always a focus on employment. It just looked a whole lot different, right? Where a lot of our folks were going to work in sheltered workshops and doing sub-minimum wage jobs and things like that. And so I know Donna was really happy when ECF came out with all the employment services. That really gave us a lot of tools to kind of move to that next level. And then really just, doing everything we can in employment. And so trying to cover all of the bases. Over the years, I went back to Donna. I said, okay, with ECF, with exploration, I have a couple of people that are going to have a lot of training before they can go and make at least a minimum wage at a position. And so Progress made the decision then to open the employment center, where we have like a mini grocery store, a mini retail, janitorial, maintenance, laundry. And so we're teaching people those different jobs here in the employment center through vocational rehabilitation adjustment services. And then we had, folks who needed long-term programs. That's what really prompted us to get into Project Search and provide for some different Project Search programs. And then we had a whole lot of people, as I said before, interested in benefits counseling. So we're like, okay, we need a benefits counselor. And that then led us to Ticket to Work. so that we can continue to service the whole person, instead of them having to switch to other agencies to get particular services. And so, Troy, I think you've got the next question.
Yes, thank you, Pam. And I want to just piggyback a little bit on what Pam talked about in terms of how their organization chose to start with employment services. And I'll just use a little bit of a comparison because SERVS, we were established in 1962 and we were established with employment services. That was the flagship program that we launched when SERVS actually began. And workshop services at that point were progressive because otherwise people were going home, sitting in the back room, watching television all day. They didn't have a full life. So when a group of families came together and said, we want our folks to have something meaningful to do, they created the first workshop in Memphis. And that was how service began. When we talk about the next bullet, which is success stories, I have so many because we've been doing employment services for so long. I gave you the example of William and Eric, who are the two gentlemen who work at AutoZone. But we have other great success stories. We have people who've been working now for 10, 15 years. They're doing an outstanding job. They've had advancement opportunities within their job. So we have a lot of great success stories. One of the things that we did that I thought was pretty creative, and that is we started to celebrate those successes. So when someone got a new job, we take a professional photo of them and hang it on the wall in the workshop. So they were the rock stars of the workshop because they had transitioned out, they were successful in the community, and they were doing great jobs. So when we did that, not really knowing the true impact of it, but when we did that, those success stories traveled around the city, around the county, because the people that were working, they were happy. The people that saw them working wanted to be like them. They wanted to have their own job. They wanted to have their own income and do things because they saw the successes that we had on the wall. But I tell you, for me, one of the most rewarding experiences I've had with supported employment is when I saw the paychecks that these first two gentlemen came home with. And I know in the workshop they were doing a great job, and we paid them fair. But when they were able to really highlight and showcase their skills in the workplace, and then to have them come back on payday, they had their really nice red AutoZone uniforms on, and they had these big checks that they were, the pride was so obvious. They were so proud of themselves. And at that point, I became proud of them because I saw that inadvertently, I was part of the problem. I was holding them back because I thought workshops were great. Let's just do the workshop thing. But when I saw how they could really thrive, I had to get on board because, as Pam referenced, we're looking to support the whole person. And if employment is a goal and they want to achieve that goal, then I believe as provider organizations, we have an obligation to help them realize what their personal outcomes are. Quite often, we get caught up in the therapeutic outcomes, the ISP, PCSP outcomes, but quite often we just need to ask the person, what is it that you really want to accomplish? And when you see them realize their dream and you see that pride, I think it's infectious. You can't go back. And that's what happened to me. So next slide, please. Okay, one of the things that I believe in terms of how employment services benefited SERVS, and that is that we were able to build and maintain those strong relationships with local employers. We have a list of about 130 different businesses that we work with. Some of those are assessment sites, and some of them actually employ people. And we have great relationships. We even have someone working down at Graceland. So if you've been to Memphis, Graceland is a huge deal. And that gentleman has been there now for at least 12 years. So when people see the work you're doing, you're out in the community, particularly if you have a job coach on site and you're able to give those positive vibes and people see the benefits of employment. They can actually walk up and interact with someone who's receiving those services and see the pride. It's really, really hard to go back from that point. So maintaining those relationships across all spectrums, you need to make sure the employers are happy, make sure the families are on board, make sure the person's happy, make sure the staff, job coach, everyone has the same mission in mind, which is to support that person to achieve their personal outcome related to employment. And then you'll see them flourish, because I've seen it dozens and dozens of times over the years. So I want to encourage you to just to keep those things in mind. Um, the community partnerships, I mentioned that we have very great relationships with employees. Sometimes you'll find out that a business can't really hire anyone right now, but they can be an assessment site. And what I mean by assessment site is we talked about the ability to try out a job. So they will let us come in and have someone try out a job and just to see if they can do it. Because we need to be able to go back to those employers and say, we have seen this person perform these tasks. They are more than capable of working in your facility and doing your work without an issue. So that's part of that relationship, maintaining and building those relationships and keeping things moving forward. So we want to encourage you to continue to keep that in mind so that we can always put forth our best foot in terms of relationships that we have with the community partners. And again, every partner is not an employer, but every partner is on board and still part of our team. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So I'm going to pass it back over to Pam for the next question.
So next one is, what has your agency done to make employment services work financially? Anybody who does employment services really understands this question, because it is hard, right? Some people we're going to have to spend a whole lot of time with. We're probably going to lose some money on that service. The next person comes along, more independent. We should be able to get that back. So we use the words break even a lot when we're talking about employment services. I think a turning point for progress was when we added maps to the employment and community team, because that gave us another source of revenue. We were able to pull um, different people like job developers from the employment team to step in and work with the people who were getting map services and wanted employment, because you still have to use the people who are trained in those positions. It was also easier because we knew a lot of people that then that we employed maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago. And now they were people coming back to us with the map services, and just being able to have another stream of revenue coming into the department was made it easy for us to then work together with employment and map. And so, Billy, I think you're up for the next question.
Yeah, thanks. So what are some barriers your agency experiences providing employment services? So right off the bat, I think we can all kind of know, and we experience this across the whole spectrum of what we do is staffing. Staffing is always such a huge issue. The staff turnover that we all experience, that is a huge barrier for us when we get so far and we invest in staff and the staff turns over and we got to hire someone else and do it. It really can interrupt our services. It keeps us from moving forward. So off the bat, that's kind of one of the big barriers we find. And then also another one we run into, interesting enough, is often the parent or the caregiver, the conservator. When we're doing employment services, we're coming in with the perspective of, really trying to open those minds to what an individual can do. And often a parent caregiver can limit that and say, well, I know my child, I know my loved one. This is all that they're capable of doing. And we take all that into consideration, of course. and listen to that and value that. But at the same time, we're there to kind of push the envelope a little bit, ish, to say, hey, maybe this individual can do more than what you're thinking. Let's take some risks, let's try and see. And so often we have these great experiences where parents and these caregivers are their eyes are opened. They can see, oh my gosh, I never knew that my child or my loved one, the one I'm serving and caring for, is capable of doing these things. So oftentimes, that's an interesting barrier that we run into, is those individuals that actually want these services for them, but end up can kind of put some real walls and boundaries around it. So that we kind of have to work through that often. And then honestly, some of the systems we work with, they're kind of antiquated. I'm not saying all the systems that we work with throughout the state, but some of the referral, the back of house stuff we have to, and some of the difficulty in getting responses back from some of these services and those that are leading the services, they cause barriers for us and slow us down in the process, and so that creates a lot of barriers for us as well. Um, as well, I think community awareness. When we go to businesses, we go to employers, and maybe they just don't understand the individuals we serve, what they can contribute to their businesses, the type of work and so there's kind of a lack of awareness or education. And so we run into that often, is that barrier there, depending on a business to manager, business owner. But that lack of awareness and that education that to be there, that's not there yet. And that's part of what we're doing, is we're educating the community. We're spending that time showing and developing all these stories that we've heard about today that Pam and Troy talk about. The more we're in the community and integrated within the community, that kind of tells the story, helps educate, it helps bring that awareness. And that's still a big thing that needs to happen. It's not happening everywhere. So we run into that a lot. Transportation is a big within services. Depending on where you're at, there may not be any transportation services that you have access to. In some places you do, depending on where you live. But that's usually a huge barrier for families to kind of figure out, how am I going to get this individual to work once they get a job? What does that look like? And oftentimes we have to get really creative and figure those things out. But transportation is a big barrier, I feel like, across the state for our persons we serve. And then kind of in general, the unpredictability of the service landscape, depending on, your provider, how many different variety of services you provide. I know our department, we provide VR, maps, ECF, DDA. We offer all those. And so when you're doing these services, and things can change quickly from one week to the next between, serving them in this way, an individual, then they get a job, and then we go to job coaching. It switches from spending a few hours a week to, like, all of a sudden we're job coaching 20 hours a week. Boy, that changes our schedules, and it's a real challenge. So we run into those barriers of figuring out those things and how quick things change in our services so quickly. So yeah, those are a few barriers, and I think I got the next two questions as well. So the next one is, what does your agency do to train people to provide employment services outside of the training? So beyond the required training, depending on the services that you're providing, um, our department, we heavily rely on shadowing. We want those new employees, the new staff that we hire, to get out with our other staff and shadow them. We spend a lot of time doing that on the forefront after the training takes place. It's really valuable for them to see, firsthand, go out in the community with our staff and watch them, observe them, how they do the services, depending on what kind of service it is. It's so great for them to do that and to observe, ask questions, and even to see and kind of learn a little bit, how am I going to approach these services? Because each of our staff puts their own twist, their own angle on how they approach the services, even individual services, how they do job development versus job coaching. Those things can change. And so we really invest a lot and spend a lot of time with our staff, putting them out there, having them shadow, spending that time with the rest of our staff as they do the services up front. So that's a big one. that we do there. We invest that way. And then also, I think at a certain point when we're doing these shadows, we have them practice, like as in job development. How are you going to approach an employer? How are you going to speak? What is your spiel? What's your angle? What are you going to say that represents, the services we provide? But if there's an individual we have in mind that we're looking for employment for, how are you going to present that individual? How are you going to do that? And so we may go to some employers and have some employers lined up in a shopping mall or strip mall or something, and then our staff that are seasoned, we, do a couple, present, go to a couple employers, and then we'll say, okay, it's your turn. You do the next two places and practice. And then we give them feedback, in the process. So they're getting their feet wet and they're learning with another staff that has experience in the process. And so that builds that, I guess, that confidence that comes that can be pretty difficult approaching employers in what we do. So, investing in those ways, that's some ways that we provide some training. Our department meets biweekly, and usually in those biweekly meetings, we will try to provide some type of training, one aspect of one service that we're doing right now, or we may have some of our staff that we feel are really good at something. They excel in a certain area at a service that we do, and we may ask them to present on that because they're good at it, and we want the rest of our staff to hear how do they approach job coaching or how do they do, this specific service. And we may have our staff engage in that way, and that actually builds their confidence, builds their knowledge as well. So it kind of feeds itself within our department. And then we do some in-person trainings. We try to meet but I think every other one of those quarters in our in-person training, we will spend time on an actual subject that we feel like in our department needs to be addressed, needs to be more training that we've kind of observed among our staff. We will invest, I don't know, an in-person training for 3 or 4 hours one day, training on that subject. And sometimes we have to go back over that depending on, staff turnover. We've gotten new staff. So, we've got a room full of staff that are seasoned and a room full of staff that are new. So sometimes we have to maybe review stuff that we've already done. But it's important to continue to provide that and give that opportunity to do that, I feel like. So those are some of the things that we do outside of the required training. And then lastly, why is it important for employment services providers to collaborate? I think in general, if we can kind of, sometimes we may see another provider as competition or something, but if we can change that mindset and see that we're all in this together, our main goal is for our clients and those that we serve. And it is really important to connect with some other providers because there is so much knowledge providers may have that we don't have. And especially as you get into new services and you're learning new services, you can pick each other's brains. How do you approach that? Um, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like the wheel's already designed from somebody else, and they're finding it works for them, and maybe it needs to be tweaked to fit within your specific setting with your department, or even the difference between, a rural setting and a non-rural setting, urban setting or whatever. Those things can change, but we can really support each other and provide each other. Just for example, recently, we partnered with Pam a little bit. We picked Pam's brain in progress on how did you approach a certain service in the maps, and they had a total different idea than we ever even thought of using. And it's like, oh, that simplifies it. That really is very helpful. So it's kind of something we've been trying ourselves, which was super helpful. We would have never even thought of it. So it's just really encouraging to have other people that you can, collaborate with because you can see that we're all in this together. Kind of there's a statement at the end of uh, presentation day that's just kind of a reminder we're all in this together, and that really, really helps instead of seeing us as separated. We're all in this together, individually in our communities, but as a state as a whole. So yeah.
Well, Billy, something I'd like to add there, and it's happened several times, and it's great to have those relationships with other employment providers because, as I mentioned earlier, we have to maintain the integrity of our relationship with the employers. So we're not going to take someone to them who can't do the work. But I have picked up the phone and called other providers of employment services in the area and said, hey, we have a great opportunity. We don't have a good candidate. Would you like for us to loop you into the discussion? So that kind of a collaboration and partnership is pretty much ongoing. Anyone that does employment services knows that they can call serves and we're going to help them out. So, and I've been able to pick up the phone and call anyone who's presenting here, anyone on our employment committee, and we talk through various things, and I find that to be extremely helpful.
Very much so. It's a good point.
Agreed. So did anyone have any questions before we move on to the success story? Okay. Okay, so I guess we are ready to move on to the two videos that we have, the success stories. We're not getting any sound.
I'll try to reshare it again. Let's see. Can you hear it
My
now?
name is Darnell Clay, and I'm a nutrition
Yes.
service assistant at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital.
Darnell came to us through Project Search.
We lost the sound again.
It's wonderful with the patients. It was like he knew what to do.
Okay. Let's just try something really quick. I'm wondering if it fades out as it starts. So I'm gonna start it over again.
My name is Darnell Clay, and I'm a
Can you hear it
nutrition
now?
services assistant at
Yes.
Children's Hospital.
Darnell came to us through Project Search, which is a program in the hospital for people with disabilities.
He trained with the children's cafeteria and did such a great job. Snatched him right up, hired him quickly.
I guess the reason that they hired me was because of my amazing infectious smile.
When he first started, he was just wonderful with the patients. It was like he knew what to do to make them stop crying. He'll always say, well, I went to this room and I did my Scooby-Doo, imitation. I made this little boy laugh.
Oh, you have to make people feel good, no matter what situation they might be in. I was born 1 pound 11 ounces for 27 weeks in the hospital. Now I was a premature baby, and I was born before this hospital was ever built, and it's come full circle for me. It just really makes my heart feel so happy. Whenever I get to meet the families, I always tell them my story just to let them know premature babies can.
I mean, he's just so impressive all around. He's got a wonderful personality, so positive, so kind. He wants to make people have a great experience here at Vanderbilt. He strives to be the person that makes the patient stay better, for sure.
I want to become a musician someday. I like to relate to patients with music. Music soothes the soul, makes them feel good, and makes them happy. And that's all I really want for all these patients, to make them happy. I wish I could think to the children, say that everything will be okay. Bring smiles on their faces, do my best to make their day.
I think he brightens a lot of their days when he goes to the room, especially the ones that they get to know and they look forward to Darnell bringing them their meals.
Words could not express how grateful, how blessed, how joyful I am to just achieve this such an amazing award.
It was so nice to be able to recognize a person that's very deserving and bring so much joy to our patients' lives. Congratulations. I am so proud of you for achieving this award.
I'm just passing trays trying to make patients days.
Would you like me to move to the next video?
Yes, thank you.
My lip, sir. And are
you Russia?
Ma'am.
I got you a good job. I said, what is it? She said, AutoZone. We strike 4 high. We look at the labels. So you better get the right labels on the pallet.
Thank you all for bearing with us during these technical challenges. We have one more short video and we're going to be getting close to wrapping up.
I am.
Thanks for meeting me here. Usually not an interweb dating guy. Barely ever use this phone cute.
And the other lady, she said, yeah, I got you a good job here. I said, what is it? She said, AutoZone. We strike 4 high. We look at the label. So you better get the right labels on the pallet. Then we wrap them. Put on the pallet, ship them out.
Whereas something on something on this label, you have to understand. Because you got two parts of the label, but they might say the same, but they might be going to different places, so.
Those guys are two of the most dedicated guys I've ever had work for us. They're on time every day. They're back from their break, back from their lunches, on time. They just blend into our culture like you wouldn't believe.
Employment first means that employment and community-based state activities are the first and primary option for persons that we support. We assist them in identifying employment opportunities or volunteer opportunities that are fully integrated in the community where they interact with people that do not have disabilities. Eric and William are a prime example of a community-based integrated employment opportunity. Not only are they interacting with people that don't have disabilities, but they're getting an opportunity to participate in activities that they do at work, such as that group exercise that they do to warm up before completing tasks.
We don't hold them to any other standards than we hold everybody else. They totally keep up. In most cases, they're waiting for the next part.
I told my mom, I said, Mom, I got a good job. I got a good job. I told my daughter family. I said, I wish y'all come out here and see my job, what I do every day. Wow. I respect them. They respect me and William. They said, yeah, we the best. We the best one they ever had.
It took me a while to get where I'm at now, but proud of myself, though.
Someone would ask me, would you hire more people with disabilities? I actually look for them, yes.
I think we definitely need to see more of the Eric and Williams across the state of Tennessee, and we need more employment first pioneers such as serves paving the way towards employment first in Tennessee.
All right, I think our last slide is just has the committee members listed. In case anyone would like to reach out to any of us for anything. That's all we have for you today, unless there are any more questions. All right, thank you all so much. We appreciate you participating. We love everything employment, and we really like it when others want to hear more about that too. So thank you very much. Thank you to TNCO for giving us this opportunity.
Absolutely.